The humanity and humans do have an important role to play in ecosystems. Historically, we haven't been that great at it, but we have all the tools we need to be better at it.
One of the biggest problems in commercial fishing is the sea life that doesn't end up on your plate. It's called bycatch. You know the huge fishing nets used at sea? Up to 40% of what they catch are unwanted species that either die or are discarded, amounting to around 40 million tonnes annually. That's clearly bad for the environment and also the economy. One possible solution is being tested in Scotland's wild western coast.
When I woke up this morning to howling gales and rain battering the bedroom window, I thought there is no way we're going to be going out on a fishing boat. But I'm told this is actually what you do. Come rain or shine, the fishing boat goes out. Morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Hi. Hiya. You ready to come fishing?
Yeah, indeed. Sea sport?
Come on, yep.
Okay.
And a life jacket just to keep you safe.
Okay, so this needs to stay on as long as we're on the boat. Good to go.
Ian Wightman is part of a testing programme with a company called Safety Net. It's created a range of devices designed to reduce bycatch by making the industry adopt what they're calling precision fishing, where fishers will be able to work out the optimal conditions and locations to catch what they do want. Tom Rossiter is Safety Net's head of precision fishing.
Hi, Tom, nice to meet you.
Oh, hi, Reya. Welcome on board.
Thank you very much for having us. What are you setting up here?
So, we're just getting ready for today when we're going to be putting various different technologies on the net, and we're hoping to learn about how the net's performing and then how the fish react to the net. And we're out here to learn, to understand better.
Brilliant, looking forward to it. Let's get going.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's not just the environment. The tech we're testing here is also meant to help make Ian's job easier and potentially earn him more money.
So this is the good ship Elian, which I built you 23 years ago. So we're a small, typical inshore trawler. This is the lifeblood of the industry up and down the coast, east coast, west coast, small boats like this.
So where are we heading to?
We are just going to go locally today because the weather's slightly inclement. It's not the best of days.
And what is it that you catch?
We fish predominantly for langoustines, which are all kept live. So they go for white linen restaurants is our main kind of thing. They go to Billingsgate, France, Italy, anywhere there's a demand.
There is this perception that the traditional fishing practices are inefficient, they're bad for the local environment. How is that changing?
It's getting worse for us because, especially in a small boat, inshore boat, we're line of sight so everybody sees us, so they associate us as being the problem. There's a whole plethora of different factors affecting the ocean, and we only know a very small percentage of what goes on under the water. It's the great unknown.
The only way we can tell what's happening down there is when we haul it up and we get the catch coming in here into the hopper. But there's a lot of things can happen between the point we drop the net in and we take it out, and if we want to fish more precisely and catch more of the right fish and less of the wrong fish and have less of an impact on the environment, we've got to understand what we're doing. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
So what do you have here, Tom?
So we've got here is our catch cam system. We'll attach this to the net and then we'll put it over the side. It's designed, you know, you can see here it's quite robust. It's taken knocks and everything else, but this is like a protective housing for it. We can adjust the angle, and we'll be putting this on the top looking down, and where we'll be putting on the net, I've put a slight angle on there because we'll be kind of looking this way basically. So yeah, this allows it to go on the trawl and we'll haul, and we don't have to worry about damaging it or whatever else.
The camera was designed in London, where the Safety Net team shares a co-working space with hundreds of other innovators in Makerversity, based at the iconic Somerset house.
Aaron, hi.
Hi Reya, welcome.
Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for having me.
The prototypes are constantly tested with feedback from fishers like Ian, so they can withstand the rigours they'll be put through underwater.
So for Catch Cam, it didn't start off looking like this. Our very first deployments, we were actually using action cameras like you get from any shop and putting them in scuba diving cases and attaching them to fishing gear. These cameras broke pretty quickly and they got crushed. The dirt got in the seals because you had to open it up every time you wanted to get the memory card out. So at the moment, we mount the Catch Cam inside something called a trawl attachment, which provides armouring to protect the camera from knocks and scrapes. And you can literally drive a tractor over this and it survives.
You say literally, is that because you've actually tried that?
And we've actually tried that. We've also dropped a cinder block on top of this and you can see it deflect and the block bounces off again.
Back on the boat, I found it really tough to function in the cold, wet conditions, but this is what a fisher's day at sea looks like. And that also has to be taken into account when designing technology for them.
How are you able to view the footage that you capture on this device?
So to work on a fishing boat, as you're seeing yourself, we've got wind, we've got rain, it just gets everywhere. It's cold, your hands don't work, all that kind of stuff you're up against. So what we can't be doing is plugging things in or taking SD cards out. If I had an SD card today, I couldn't hold it, it'd be gone, it's too blown away. So everything's kind of wireless. I can stream the footage from the camera to my tablet.
And so that's in real time?
Not when it's on the bottom. Physics, unfortunately, comes in there, but when it's on deck, then I can do it.
This kind of window into the underwater world isn't just useful for the fishing industry.
We've now realised that the technologies we've developed are also of interest for anyone doing any underwater activity that requires eyes underwater. So we're looking at other people who are making artificial coral reefs or foundations of underwater structures who really want to understand the presence of animals underwater. We can record up to 40 hours of footage, and then you can set this to time lapse. So if you're monitoring, say, an underwater structure for marine growth or fish species behaviour, if you set it to take one frame of footage every 10 minutes, we can get up to 3 weeks of recording.
The camera lets us see what's going on in the deep, but equally important are the things we can't see.
So on the surface level, satellites can gather a lot of data, and that's where we get a lot of the information that feeds through to the weather forecasting and lots of models, etc. But the sea is incredibly deep, and after the first meter, we're kind of clueless. So what we have here, this is the sensor unit. It's actually wirelessly charged like you would do with your phone, and then we've got a number of sensors on the ends, and then it comes inside this protective housing. But what fishermen can do is if we put this on the fishing gear goes in the water and goes down through the water, and then it sits on the bottom, and then it comes back up. So we're getting the water column, and we can get several measurements of that in a day just by piggybacking off of what the fishermen are doing. So if you think about, you know, the temperature of the water, the clarity of the water, the pH, levels of oxygen, all that kind of stuff, the oceanographic type information, that drives productivity, it drives how the fish feed, reproduce, all the rest. And this information then can also be quite useful to the fishermen, because certain species will like or prefer certain conditions. So why waste your time? You know, go somewhere else, or, you know, don't fish even, and save yourself the cost. So what we're trying to do is give fishermen the tools to become scientists in their own right.
All of these parameters that we're measuring using this device kind of form an underwater weather report that's happening beneath the waves. And why this is interesting is that, just like humans, a lot of ocean species have different preferences about where they like to live. Is it a bit warmer? Is it a bit saltier? Is there more nutrients in the water? And this includes bycatch and target catch.
Building a picture of what's going on underwater could also help us understand how climate change is affecting the ocean.
Like last year, I'm sure everybody will remember, it was incredibly warm. It was the warmest year on record. Well, the water temperature around here and around the British Isles, we had 20 degrees centigrade water temperature in sea. That's absolutely crazy numbers. Now, that's on the surface. You go down lower and you get towards the bottom, it's probably closer to 5 or 6. But that's changing how things are behaving. And if you're an animal and you can't tolerate that, you're going to go somewhere else where it's either warmer or colder, and generally they're looking for the colder conditions. So with that climate change, the fishermen are finding new species turning up where they weren't previously. So this type of technology will help us to understand what's driving that, and also to help predict what's going to happen in the future.
And for scientists, this is exciting because it is very expensive and very difficult to measure underwater. And those measurements feed into our weather forecast models, our climate change models, our ability to predict cyclones and storms, or model how nutrients get taken up from one part of the ocean and get transported to another part. We're hoping to contribute to this scientific picture through scaling up ocean measurement, but also doing it in a way that's worthwhile to the skipper who's deploying the device as well.
It's almost time for the net to go down. As Ian and Tom do their final preparations, I discover another problem they're trying to tackle. It's called ghost fishing. Sometimes when fishing gear is lost at sea, free-floating nets can continue to trap sea life, which can seriously damage marine ecosystems. And lost equipment is also costly to replace.
How big a problem is ghost fishing?
Globally, it's a massive problem. In the UK, trawlers, not such a big problem, doesn't happen very often. But for static gear, so if you're working nets or traps and pots, then yeah, it does happen. And there's gears on the seabed, they've been there for years, and they continue fishing and animals will get entrapped in them, and they're lost to the fishery and they're lost to the kind of ecosystem. So it's not a good thing. Plus a lot of it's kind of plastics in there, so we get leaching to the environment. So this is a device called My Gear Tag. It's an acoustic system for helping locate lost fishing gear, and it works using acoustic sound waves. So you transmit a message from the boat to the device and it will respond and say, I'm here, I'm here.
How long do these things last down there?
So this system's got interchangeable batteries, and the battery will last for 60 days. Each one's got its own unique, a bit like your mobile phone. It's got one number, so you phone that and it rings here, and then you get the signal back. No fisherman wants to lose his fishing gear because it's got an economic cost, but it does happen. And as a fisherman, you want to get it back as quickly as possible, but if you don't know where it is, that can be very difficult.
Once they know where it is, fishers could use a grappling hook or another net to snag the lost gear from the bottom. If the water's shallow enough, they could even use a diver. The technology that's been sent down with the net isn't just trying to change what we pull out of the sea, but also the way we fish.
We don't have an unlimited quota. Langoustines are a quoted species, so it's in my interest to catch them as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because I don't want to be out here any longer than I have to be. If I can come out and reduce my working day by 2 or 3 hours, it's less fuel, it's less impact on the environment, I've got more home time, I'm more refreshed, I'll be better at my job the next day. So for me it's win-win all the way.
We're several hours into today's expedition and the conditions really are miserable. It's so cold and wet, I'm totally lost. You'll see in my hands and turnings. And it's really clear to see why the fishermen like Ian, having the technology enables their work to be a bit accurate and faster, would be a great help. She's so cold.
After several hours, it's finally time to bring the net back up.
You happy with the catch?
We don't like the stones. That was wrong place, wrong time. but as you can see, there's no small fish.
Ian sorts through the catch to pick out what he's come out here for.
So we're just selecting the langoustines, different sizes, different tubes.
So this is the small ones, the medium ones and the large ones?
Large ones, yeah.
So that's a big one, is it?
That's a big one. That's a male. Nice colours, clean shells. We want to get the langoustines into the tubes, into the tanks as fast as possible. And we also want to get whatever we don't want back in as fast as possible again.
Oh wow, what's that?
That's a flounder. She's spent, there's very little meat on her. So she's going back.
You throw her back in the water?
Yeah, go back, yep.
Ian saves what he can, but bycatch can be especially bad in the deep sea. That's where endangered species like dolphins and turtles get tangled up in fishing nets. That isn't just bad for biodiversity, but also affects food webs and ecosystems.
What's this one here?
These are squat lobsters. So these are very much like a langoustine. They're sweeter compared to the langoustine, but the liver's disintegrate on them at a phenomenal rate. So to keep them, we either have to freeze them aboard or tail them. So we would tail them slightly bigger than this. We would tail the bigger ones and we would keep them, but we don't have much of a market for these. But some of the supermarkets import them from South America.
But for this purpose, you just put them,
Just put them back, yep.
I see you've got some friends joining you on board.
The wildlife gets quite excited. Sudjunk starfish. So that's the kind of normal one. You don't see that many of them, but
It's quite rare, is it?
yeah. But they go back. Everyone goes back.
So compared to a normal day, this is not even close to a good.
This is definitely a non-profit day.
After Ian sorted out the catch, it's time to see what Tom's captured with his tech.
So we've just seen the net come up and all of the content sifted through, and alongside that content we've also got the data that you've been able to capture. So what are we looking at here?
This is from the sea sensor, so we start here up at the top. This is our temperature, and actually today it's a very cold day, as we all know, and the water temperature at the surface is colder than what it is at the bottom. So water, the sea or the oceans, they're like a heat sink, so it's the surface level changes quicker than actually what it does at the bottom. That tends to stay pretty stable. So yeah, it's cold on the bottom, so I'm glad we didn't fall in. So then we've got pressure, which is the kind of inverse of what we're looking at here, which from the pressure sensor we work out the depth. Then what we have here on these three are the accelerometer data, which is measuring the movement. If it was bouncing along, you'd see lots and lots of spikes. If it was pretty steady, it's kind of smooth, and that helps us understand the impact that the trawl's having on the seabed. Is it digging in? Is it crashing around the place, or is it pretty smooth and constant?
That impact is actually a major concern for environmentalists. Dragging nets on the sea floor can devastate habitats and displace marine life, often with long-term consequences.
We saw the contents of the net included a pretty big rock, which presumably is from the seabed, and the impact the fishermen have on the seabed is probably quite a big concern, isn't it?
Listen, everything we do as a species or anything else, we all have an impact on the world. You can argue whether it's acceptable or unacceptable, but we have to say, or I would certainly argue, that we're catching food here for people to eat, sustenance. You are going to have an impact, but it's nowhere near as bad as people would imagine. And actually, we're working hard to try and reduce that. And there's a project now that we've got some involvement with the University of Ulster, where they're going to come in and they're going to survey an area to see what it's like before any fishing activity in it. Then they're going to take the gear and they're going to go over it, and they're going to have equipment like ours on there and the cameras, and they're going to be watching what's happening. And then they'll go back and they'll use a sonar and they'll scan the area and they'll try and measure, well, how much impact did that have? And okay, if we towed over twice or 10 times, or what, and then how quickly does it recover?
You've also got the camera, which has enabled you to have visibility of the net when it was under the water. What can you see on this one?
So here basically we have is a panel that allow fish to swim out, or that's the idea. There's one fish escape, yeah. Now we hit some sediment that's getting pushed out through it. So what we're seeing here is fish that Ian doesn't want actually escaping out of the panel.
Seeing how fish interact with the net can help redesign the gear to enable more unwanted species to escape, and it can help fishers avoid areas where they'd pick up too much bycatch.
So we're experimenting with this and we're trying to find a kind of solution to help and get rid of the fish that Ian doesn't want and keep the ones he does.
This is a visual that before your technology, Ian would never have been able to see so quickly.
Oh, he would never get to see it, you know. He'd have to be a seal to see it, to be quite honest with you.
So alongside the camera and the sensor, you also have the LED light. What does that tell you?
So as you can see, we've got two kind of colours here. We've got a red on the outside and then we've got a green on the inside. So the different species will have attraction and the ability to see these different colours of lights. So you can tune the light colour and that can affect which animals react in which way.
Tom and his team are working out the best colours and designs to make these lights more effective in this part of Western Scotland. But lights like these have already had success elsewhere.
There are fisheries as well in the world where actually lights are used in the regulation. If you haven't got lights, you're not allowed to fish. There's a shrimp fishery in Oregon, on the west coast of the US, for instance, where there's a bycatch is a species called Yulcon, and there with the lights, they're able to significantly reduce the bycatch. But it's only two species. It's the shrimp and it's the Yulcon, and yeah, it works there. It's not a precise science by any stretch of the imagination, but with more trials and more effort, we'll get there, and there's a sweet spot. It's a very small sweet spot. It's such a dynamic, three-dimensional world down there that all of it has to come into it.
That's a huge amount of data that we're able to collect just on one net. How is it used?
Predominantly in this format, it's perfect for the scientists, for the researchers who want to try and figure things out. And we need them to do that in order to understand what's going on. And that relates to the climate change, it relates to precision fishing and doing a better job.
The team is currently providing data to marine scientists at Edinburgh's Heriot-Watt University to make sense of the information so it's actually useful to fishers like Ian. They're also talking to governmental agencies, but warn it's still early days and could take a long time for tech like this to become standard. But convincing the industry to be proactive could also be difficult. People who fish across Europe have been protesting against the EU's push towards more sustainable policies. Ian says people like him have to be included in the conversation.
We need to improve the data. The government aren't going to give us any money to improve the data, so we have to get data where we can. Data that we're involved in, we might not like what the data tells us, but if we've been involved in it, we can take it on the chin and we can work with it.
There is this perception that fishermen are part of the problem when it comes to sustainability and the welfare of fish. Is that fair?
I would say we've not been the whitest of white, but in the last decade we have come on leaps and bounds with our technical measures and the way we approach things, where it's not in a fisherman's interest to catch the last scallop, the last prawn. They're not our seas, they're everybody's seas. We're just custodians, and it's not in any of our interests not to have an industry to hand on to the next generations.
The way we fish our seas has already transformed ecosystems, pushing some species to the brink of extinction. But if technology like this makes fishing more efficient, it could also help regain some of the delicate balance that lets ocean life thrive.
We've all seen the headlines about our seas being fished to oblivion.
How could the technology you're developing help turn that around?
It's certainly the biodiversity is changing through climate change, and we're seeing that, and cod's a good example where it's moved north, significantly in the last 20, 30 years. What our technology is doing is helping to understand, what's going on down there, both what you can see with your eyes, but also understanding the unseen stuff in terms of the oceanographic parameters. So your temperature, your salinity, your turbidity, the light and kind of light at the bottom of the ocean, etc. All these things are kind of drivers within the overall system. We're not going to necessarily be able to turn this around very quickly. We've created this problem, but what we can do is we can manage it going forward, and we can hopefully start predicting perhaps some of the things and then planning better our activities as kind of human beings as well.
I really feel like the world faces so many challenges, and often design and engineering is somewhat disconnected from the solutions to those challenges. And I really want to pursue an agenda personally of using technology either as well thought through human-centered, planet-centered solutions for the world's challenges, or as this kind of passport or diplomat between the natural world and the human world. I love the natural world, I love the oceans. I think the humanity and humans do have an important role to play in ecosystems. Historically, we haven't been that great at it, but we have all the tools we need to be better at it.